We are here at RPM Motorsports with John Dock and Wes Bow, or Wes B, or Wes Bow. I'm gonna walk over here because John's a dick. So, what we got going on tonight is we're putting brakes on the cow, and we are going to install some solid motor mounts, and we are also going to put the transmission back in, even though we don't have all the parts to finish it. Anyways, what we're gonna go over is a Turbo 400 swap and a 5th gen Camaro. I'll show you the parts that I made to make it happen. It's actually really easy. A lot of people, you know, say manual valve body 400 swaps in new cars are hard. This one's not. If you have a few basic fabrication skills and you can bolt some stuff together, you can make this work. So let me go dig up some of the parts and I'll show you what I got going on. I'm outside now because John's making a ton of noise. So here's the first part of the puzzle. So what this is a factory V8 Camaro trans cross member. Normally the transmission mounts on these two holes at the rear of the transmission. John had a 6-speed manual in his, now of course an automatic. This drive shaft loop I added afterwards because he needed it for safety. That's why it's never been painted and it's just kind of rough cut. Factory cross member. What I did is I came in, I notched out the factory cross member and just put a piece of plate aluminum in here. I can weld aluminum here at the shop, so we welded it in. If you can't weld aluminum, any fab shop near you should be able to take care of this, no problem. You can see on the bottom side, there used to be webbing in here. You just come in with a cutoff wheel and cut all this stuff out. No big deal. Drill a couple new holes for your new transmission mount in this aluminum plate that you install. And you can see, you know, we've got the drive shaft loop bolted to the back of this just for safety purposes. But welded it across the back. Welded it across the front as well. All this piece does is support the rear of the transmission. This isn't really structural. This isn't really structural. Structural? How do you say structural? I can't say it. Structural.
We all sound stupid.
Yeah, why can't I say it? Anyways, all this part has to do is support the rear of the transmission, which isn't that much weight. So it doesn't need to be super badass and heavy duty. This is aluminum. It's some 1/4-inch plate. No big deal. All right, next. You dick! Next piece of the puzzle, torque converter. So this is a Turbo 400 torque converter. Nothing special about this. It's meant to bolt into a Turbo 400. I'm sorry. It's meant to slide into a Turbo 400 pump. So this 3-bolt is meant to go on a flex plate, not a flywheel. Flex plate. Standard either 400 or 4L80 pattern. We're not really sure yet.
I think they're comparable.
They're pretty close.
Yeah.
I hope this fits.
So do I.
Okay, but anyway, standard torque converter, nothing crazy. This is a PTC. John sent out all the specs to his car, the weight, how fast it is, how much power it makes.
Shout out to Dusty at PTC for hooking me up.
Anything else on this? Anything else crazy?
Pretty much just weight, power, kind of setup. He asked like what size turbo, what size motor, kind of trying to get an idea of, I guess, how the power comes in and how it rides up top.
So check these guys out, PTC. The struggle. Anyways, always pre-lube your converter. Always try to get at least a quart of fluid in your new converter. You don't want to start it up dry and have the pump have to fill this thing up. So always add fluid. We run just regular old off-the-shelf multi-purpose ATF. Oh, I just got it first try. All the way in. These two notches right here in the converter are what turns your pump inside the transmission. If you look here, you have 2 shafts. One shaft is stationary, this one. This shaft spins. So basically, this holds one of the vanes, I guess you could say. I don't know what the actual term is, still in the converter, and then the converter spins this one. So when you install this into the transmission, you have to make sure that it's installed all the way into the pump. Kind of like, I'll try it again.
Got it first try.
I did. Now I'm gonna bar it. Yep. There it is. All right, guys. Turbo 400. This has an S&W bell housing on it. Stock case. So what this does is this actually makes it able to bolt up to an LS engine. I think I used 6 bolts on this one, 2 on each side, and 1 here and 1 here. The extra holes up here are for different blocks This bell housing will actually bolt up to a couple of different blocks, but it does fit the LS well. The dowels are the right size, all that good stuff. Stock case. Polyurethane trans mount. This is for like an old school 400, 350, 700 R4. And fittings for our trans cooler lines. And this little bracket holds the trans brake solenoid. You can see the plunger in here. And dipstick goes here. That's it. On the back of the engine, SFI, flex plate, ARP bolts. This is a conversion flex plate. So what this does is it bolts up to an LS crank, and I believe it uses either a small block or a 4L80 converter bolt pattern. So this allows you to bolt to the back of the engine to a Turbo 400. This is the custom-made linkage bracket. This bolts to the pan on the transmission and the pan of the engine, so it's nice and sturdy and stable. And I'll show you that once we get the transmission installed.
Something like that.
All right, guys, I've got the transmission up in the car. I'll show you some stuff real quick. So the converter is in here, and what you see here is the gap between the converter and the flex plate. We need to put a washer in there because that is too much room. So basically what you do, see if I can hold a flashlight and a GoPro. If you pull the converter out of the transmission, which it's hard to do right now because everything's painted, you're going to close this gap up. What that does is it pulls the converter out of the pump. You need to minimize that space. So one little washer in here will probably get us where we need to go, and I will look up the specs so I don't lie to you and I tell you certain what the gap is supposed to be. Got the trans lines hooked up, solenoid for the trans brake is in, and I will get the trans cross member in here shortly. Transmission cross member installed. You can see it uses the factory bolts on each side, and then up in here we have some little I believe these are 3/8 bolts. Yeah, 3/8 bolts. No washers because when I drilled the cross member, I drilled them a little close to this wall right here, but we're gonna fix that in the upcoming redo of the Camaro. John is currently installing this gigantic drive shaft into his 9-inch rear end. We are good to go. All right, guys, let's talk about converter spacing. We have a 3-speed transmission here. That's what this video is about, so that's what we'll go with. So, gap between converter pad and flex plate, you want to be 3/16 of an inch. This is a 3/16 drill bit. As you can see, it slides in here nice and smooth, has a little bit of wiggle room. So what I need to do is find a washer that will take up the extra space so that when I bolt this together, it's going to pull the converter 3/16 of an inch out of the pump, and that's going to be our ideal spacing. So what I'll do is I'll grab a drill bit a size bigger than this and keep going up until it fits snug, and then I'll measure the difference between the two, and that's the thickness washer that I need. So here's what we're looking at. I don't know if I'm too close or too far away. So PTC converter through bolts with a nylock nut and red Loctite. You can see I put one washer in between. That gave me the proper spacing. Now we'll throw some shift linkage at it, and we are good to go. All right, guys, this is the shift linkage bracket. So you can see it bolts to the oil pan. As you can see, it bolts to the oil pan and then comes up and bolts to the trans pan with a little spacer. This gets everything in line, and the shifter that John has in this car, the cable actually has to come from the front. Normally it'll bolt to the pan back here, but this one is opposite because of the shifter he has. Something I didn't show you, which is probably really hard to see right now, there's the shifter right up above the drive shaft loop. What I did is I made a little bucket for it to sit in so that it fits the center console still, and I'll show you that here in a second. Show you guys the shifter real quick. I've got the old flashlight. So what I did here is I cut his stock console up a little bit right here in the rear, and you can see we got the B&M badass race shifter in here. Use the stock boot, put a little sticker there so you know what gear you're in. And this took a little bit of work to get the shifter to fit like this. If you don't want to spend this much time, if you got a race car, you can mount it to a plate right to the floor, and then you're good to go. You can see this fits in here, doesn't hit the radio, doesn't hit the HVAC knobs. All I had to do is trim out this little area for when you pull it back into first. The handle fits. So right now we're in neutral. This is first, second, third gear. All the way back up. Into park. And that's it. So that's just a quick rundown of what it takes to put a Turbo 400 in a 5th gen Camaro. It's pretty straightforward. Little things like hooking up the trans brake is just 2 wires. Showed you a little bit about converter spacing. If you have any questions, be sure to comment below, and always remember to comment, like, and subscribe.
Dab.